Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Kizzy and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my July wrap up. It's so crazy how quick this year is going, but here we are in July and I read 6 books in July as per usual. I tend to read 6 books every month no matter how much I try to change it up or how quickly I read. Always comes out at 6 books. So 6 books. I have an array, I think, from 5 stars to, I think my lowest is 2 stars perhaps, and I have to say it was a pretty good reading month in terms of like the quality of books that I read and how much I enjoyed them, so I'm excited for this wrap up. It should be good. I will say that my reading definitely petered off to the end of the month. If you watch my reading vlogs, and you'll know that I did the Reading Rush readathon that was happening kind of mid-July time, and that started off great, but then I hit a massive reading slump and I still haven't really got back into it, even though it's now like the 6th of August, so I still haven't actually finished a book since finishing the last book in this series, and I finished that about a week and a half before the end of July, so yes, focusing on getting out of the reading slump this month. But here we are with the July wrap up, starting with My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. So this has major trigger warnings for statutory rape in general, abuse, all those kind of things. Like, it is quite a heavy, hard-hitting book with really hard topics that aren't skirted around really, like they're faced kind of head on. So if that's something you're sensitive to, then definitely I wouldn't recommend picking it up. But if you're not and you kind of like hard-hitting contemporaries that have quite a lot of meaning, or there's a lot kind of relevance to today's society and what's going on in the media and all that kind of thing, I would definitely recommend this book. It was an incredible book and one that really will make you feel so many things. It'll make you feel uncomfortable, it'll make you question your own morals, you'll kind of like put yourself in the situations of the different characters and think, would I have done that? Like, a lot of the time you're kind of thinking, I wouldn't have done that and I would have done something different, but I don't know, it makes you think a lot and I would definitely recommend it. So we follow a girl who moves to boarding school when she's 15, I want to say. I'm not quite sure how old she is exactly. She is definitely underage, and she is groomed by her English teacher whilst there, and he kind of has an impact on her whole life. We follow 2 timelines of her at school and her in the kind of later, like, modern day with the whole Me Too movement going on, and how that's kind of affecting her mindset, and how it's not so straightforward as she was abused, therefore she feels like the victim, or she feels the kind of negative repercussions of that. It's much more twisted, much more difficult to understand, and it's just an incredible book. So she doesn't really feel like she's been abused in this. He's kind of groomed her so well, and you can see him doing that as you go through the book, and sometimes it's frustrating because you just want her to realise what he's doing to her, but she also, like, Elizabeth Russell does this in such a way that you can completely understand and see how it can happen, and it's a really good book, very eye-opening, very kind of engaging and mentally taxing. I know a lot of people kind of split this up with different books just because it's quite a hard book to read and they can't read a lot of it in one go. I actually just wanted to get through it as quickly as possible, not because it was bad, but just because I kind of wanted to move on to lighter stuff, but I couldn't feel like I could do that whilst reading this book. I felt like it needed my whole attention. So I read it in a few days, but it's totally up to you, like personal preference. But I gave this 5 stars, would definitely recommend. So the next book I read was my most anticipated book for the year, and you've probably seen it everywhere if you have like BookTube or you have like Bookstagram or anything like that, because it has been promoted a lot. So that book is The Court of Miracles by Kester Grant, and this was in my most anticipated books of the year video that I did right at the start, and like my all-time kind of overtop favourite of the year that I was hoping, or like my most anticipated book of the year, and it didn't quite live up to those expectations. The reason I was anticipating it so much was because it was likened to Six of Crows, and there's always kind of 2 ways that can go. It can make you pick up a book because obviously you like that book and you really love it because you see the similarities and it's the same similarities you were looking for, or it can be not the same similarities, so then it can be a bit of a disappointment, which is sadly what this was for me. So I can see the correlation between Six of Crows, I can see why it was likened to it. It does have that kind of underground, grungy kind of feeling of the kind of those outside of the law, that kind of thing, but what I was hoping for was much more of a kind of found family trope which had elements of it in it, but not as much as Six of Crows, and not kind of the same fun, light-hearted nature as Six of Crows had. There was coming to it at the end, like there was bits of it picking up, so I'm excited for the next one in the series. I will be reading the next one, but I think I gave this like a 3.5 star rating just because it wasn't quite what I expected, or my expectations weren't quite met with it. But I know people love this book, so I would recommend picking it up if it's something you sound interested in. So this follows the underground of Paris in, I think it's 1828, so I think that's after the French Revolution, but it was if the French Revolution hadn't succeeded. I don't know history, so that's literally me just making up what I think happened based on what I've read about this book. I actually don't know if that's accurate at all, so please don't pick me up on that, or let me know if I'm wrong, but please don't take my word for it. But this follows that kind of period, and in Paris there are these underground criminals that are kind of divided into sectors, or the one court, the Court of Miracles, is all the criminals, but each criminal is divided into a subsection called guilds, and there's like the Guild of Chance, Beggars, Smugglers, Letters, Thieves, Dreamers, Flesh, Mercenaries and Assassins. So obviously you can see it's an interesting world, but it's also a retelling of Les Miserables. If you've read that, I haven't, so I can't really say how much it corresponds to that, but that is also what it's marketed as. But it follows Nina, who has a sister, and her sister is sold to the Guild of Flesh, which is a very bad guild, and it's all about prostitution, and the guy who's the head of it is very bad, and he's the like nemesis of this book. So she then kind of dedicates the rest of her life to getting her back, but along the way she kind of gets a adopted sister as well, who also is in trouble from the same guy. So it's her trying to save them both basically from this man, but she is part of the Guild of Thieves as well. So it's good, it's good. Like, I read it really quickly, it's super easy to read, super easy to get into. Read it in like a day or day and a half basically, and I didn't feel like I was reading it that long. Like, I didn't feel like I spent the whole day reading it, so you can definitely read it quickly. But yeah, that's that one. 3.5 stars. Would recommend it if it's something you're interested in, but maybe not looking for that found family trope in the way that Six of Crows does it, basically. Okay, so the next book we have is my most anticipated series release. So this is the third in the series, and that is The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, and oh my gosh, you have to read this series if you haven't read this series. It is a masterpiece of a series. I loved it. I know lots of people love it, so I think I'm okay in saying that everyone should read this book, but it is amazing. So for those that don't know, City of Brass is the first book in the series, and it follows a girl who lives in Cairo in Egypt, and she stumbles across this kind of, I don't know, she ends up calling this jinn to her, and he then takes her to this magical city where she's actually discovered to be kind of magical and has high, like, important magical abilities that she didn't know about. But the politics in this world are really, like, it's just good. And S.A. Chakraborty's writing is amazing. Like, she is one of the best writers of fantasy that I've read. Like, her prose is beautiful, and it's just so good. Like, oh my gosh, the characters in this are amazing. I just loved it. I loved every moment that I spent in this world. I loved. And I want to reread the series because I just don't want it to end, basically. And I can't wait for what else she brings out because I think it's going to be good. But oh, it's so good. It's magical, whimsical, interesting. It's got good fight scenes. It's got good people. It's got bad people. It's got complicated people. It's got morally grey people. It's a good book. It's a great series. I would recommend it. It's wonderful. Please pick it up. If you're at all a fantasy lover, please pick it up because it's worth it. Also, if you're kind of looking to branch out from YA fantasy, I think this is a good adult fantasy to start with because it feels a little bit light-hearted when you first start it. And I mean, it does that all the way through. Like, it does get dark at moments, but it's not like dark like a lot of adult fantasy is. So it kind of has that nice feeling that YA fantasy tends to have. So yeah, I think that's a good bridge, but yes, I love this book. So the next book we have, which is the first book that I finished for the readathon, the Reading Rush readathon, so all these 3 books I read for that as well. And this book I read in a day, in like a couple of hours, which is really easy to do because it's fully written in prose, but it is a novel, or it is a complete storyline. and that is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. And this is told entirely in prose, but it has a kind of novel-like storyline to go along with it. But the feelings you do get from it being in prose is completely different, obviously because it's much more focused on the emotional side of it, and you don't have that kind of like distracting other aspects that you tend to get in novels. So I really enjoyed it. I was nervous about the prose because I don't really read poetry. I've never really read a book like this before, but I loved it. Super easy to read, and I think the story was good as well. So this follows two girls, two points of views. One lives in New York, the other in the Dominican Republic, and one day there is a plane crash of this plane travelling from New York to the Dominican Republic, and their father is on board, but neither of the girls know the other one exists. So the father had two families, or secret families, that he hid from the other daughter, and obviously when the plane crashes and he does pass away, the funeral arrangements and all that kind of thing, it's revealed to the other girl that the other girl exists, basically. And it's them coming to terms not only with their father passing away, but discovering this new family, this new sibling, and all those kind of complex emotions that come with it. It's really good. I would really recommend it. I really want to read more of Elizabeth Acevedo's work now. I think she's got a few YA novels and another prose novel. That's exciting. I want to read them all, basically. I would recommend. I gave this four stars, I believe. It didn't quite reach 5 stars because I think I'm still used to the much more complex kind of side of the plot that comes along with novels, less so with prose. I think it's quite difficult to get that across in just 400 pages of prose. But I keep saying prose, it's not prose. Verse. It's written in verse. Oh my god, I think I've done that in every single video. Did I do that in the Reading Rush vlog? I think I did. Apologies if you've watched that video. I think I meant verse, but I've said prose. Prose is like a novel. I'm an English literature student, I should be able to do this. Okay, sorry. Okay, every time I said prose before, I meant verse. It's written entirely in verse. Okay, I'm just going to move on now because that's embarrassing. Moving on. So the next book I finished is a very small one, and one that I gave 2 stars to. I wasn't that impressed by it. It's a little bit boring, and it is The Prime of Mystery Brodie by Muriel Spark. This is set in the 1930s in a school in Edinburgh that is an all-girls school, and it focuses on this group of girls who are taught by Miss Jean Brodie, and the kind of cult-like atmosphere she creates in her classroom and with these girls as a group, that kind of she raises them to look at her with admiration and glory, and she is not all that, basically. But I don't know, it was just a bit of a meh book. Like, there wasn't really much to it. I didn't really enjoy it. It was just a bit boring. I feel like when it came out maybe it was a little bit better, but now, reading it in retrospect, I don't really mind. I would just watch the film, basically. So this, I was interested to pick this up basically though because my great gran went to the school with Muriel Spark, and like, so it's a real school, it's Muriel Spark's school, and my gran was actually in her year, or in the time period that she was there. So that was quite interesting, but I mean, I don't know. It didn't really add anything to the book. It was just interesting to know that as a fact when reading it. But 2 stars flat. So the 6th and final book that I read last month, which is probably one of my favourite books I read this month. It was a pretty good one, actually. One of the best YA debut novels that I've read in fantasy in a very long time, and that is The Songs of Wrath and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. It's an incredible fantasy. If you're a fantasy lover and you're going to read 2 books from this, well, there's only 3 fantasies in this, but you got to read City of Brass and you have to read this. So this is such a good fantasy. So I've read a lot of fantasy debut novels recently, if you've watched my videos, and they've all been kind of 3 stars, 3.5 stars if I'm pushing it. None of them have swept me away, basically, but oh my god, this was so good. So this follows 2 points of views. We have Malik and we have Karina, and it's a matriarchal system, and the woman who, or the queen family that rules this, don't like this other dominion of their country, and I don't know why. It hasn't really got into why that is, I don't think. I can't remember, I read it like 2 weeks ago now, but they don't really like where Malik is from, and the whole country has prejudice against them. They're treated really badly, they're kind of looked down upon. They're made to be like the servants and do all the like the rubbish jobs and stuff like that. And he's trying to get into this city to get a better life, but they won't let him in if they know where he's from. So he's trying to get in on these fake documents, but the documents get stolen, and that trips up this whole kind of storyline of like disaster and adventure and all this juicy stuff. And he ends up meeting Karina, who is the heir to the throne of this kingdom, and through events that happen, it just all goes a bit wrong, all goes good. It's just adventure packed, good characters, good writing, which is something I've been missing from a lot of YA fantasy. I just haven't been getting on with their writing style, a lot of the authors, but Rosanna Brown, she's got it. She's good writing style. I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the plot, really enjoyed the characters. I just loved everything about this book basically, and I gave it 5 stars, and I cannot wait for the next book. It is a duology, I believe, so that's exciting, and it's due to come out next year. Also exciting, so please read it. Just read it. It's so good. Yeah, and it's beautiful. Like, it's a beautiful book. I don't know if it picks up properly on camera, but it's just so shiny and beautiful and intricate. It's a stunning cover. Please pick it up if you like fantasy, you like YA fantasy. I would recommend it. I would recommend it, and I've tabbed a bit, which is rare for me, so yes, I loved it. I hope you pick it up. Let me know if you pick it up, or if you've already read it and you loved it as much as me, or if you read it and you didn't like it. That's also interesting to know. So yeah. So that's everything for today. Thank you for watching. I shall see you in another video. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe, all that juicy stuff. Comment below any thoughts you had on these books or other books that you read this month that you would recommend, and I shall see you in another video.